how to optimize your post-sales revenue conversations. And super, super excited about this. We mentioned this a little bit in our last session in May around how to apply AI platforms strategically. And that this was, it's largely based on a book that Shawn Stifler, one of our co-leads today, shared with me. And so we'll dig into all of that. But let me first do some introductions. We've got Shawn Stifler and Cynthia Silva. If you want to just maybe share a little bit about who you are and let folks know who you are real quick.
Shawn, go ahead.
Cynthia? Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Shawn Stifler. I'm the Director of Operations at Dr. Genius. I handle all things post-sales, and I've been in that role for some time, and we serve the SMB market. So a little bit about me, and I'm excited to be here today.
Nice. Yeah, Cynthia Silva. This topic is super relevant to me because I spent most of my career on the sales side. I pivoted to CS when I joined NASDAQ's FinTech division, and then of course, obviously active on this community and others. But I think this topic right now is extremely timely because every company is talking about retention, and God forbid, can you even expand? And I think according to some of these frameworks, you can. And I can't wait to talk about it. Jen, back to you.
All right. And I probably haven't officially announced myself. I'm Jan Young, one of the founder of CX Exchange and what else? Oh, and I'm the founder and chief customer officer of Jan Young CX. I'm not used to introducing myself. Okay, so let's come back over and dig in. And all right, so just so you know where this is coming from, a lot of what we're talking about here today is from a really exciting book that called The Expansion Sale. It actually came out in 2020, and it's listed here as one of the resources in the back as well. But what they talk about isn't just the sort of 4 commercial moments that you have conversations around that are, strategic moments, usually revenue related moments, but they also have tested them. Right. And so when I read this book, it really resonated for me. And it really started me thinking about how I've applied it and how I've used these types of conversations and when they've gone well and when not so much. Right. And really, it seems like, wow, it just really correlated to so much of what they sort of tested as and what's really tried and true in terms of how you go through these conversations. But what's also really exciting is the conversations I've had with Shawn in terms of how he's actually applied it in his CS program. And that is where it really gets exciting, where tools are really a function of your strategy, right? And so it's really, that's why we meet here every week, because it really is the strategy and your approach to CS that's going to help you use any tool efficiently and effectively. So these 4 commercial moments are renewals, price increases, upsells, and apologies. And there's a few different sort of things that go into these conversation structures, but it's essentially the elements are where you're talking about why stay, why evolve, and why change. But when you think about why change really primarily belongs in that pre-sales moment, right? Because that's when you're trying to really be disruptive. You're trying to make the customer move from something that they're already doing and change over, right? So that's disruptive change. That's a big, that's why sales and marketing, is tough in terms of that change moment, because it takes so much effort to change, right? It's very emotional too. Like there's so much involved in that. But when you think about it, as soon as they come over and they've purchased your product from the very beginning, even into onboarding, you need to then help them get over that buyer's remorse and help them understand that they made the right decision, right? And so they're going through that buyer's remorse, that slump. And instead you say, no, come back up here, come back, little Shiva, like let's get excited. Let's reaffirm that you made the right decision. Why stay, right? And then that becomes, key. When they do outgrow your, current product by using it efficiently, by optimizing how they use it for that business impact, then you introduce a little bit of why change, but still with that why stay element to it, or else they start looking around for the grass is greener if you introduce too much of that why change messaging. So that's kind of what the case that they make, and then they dig into the details. And so expansion conversations in particular, when you're looking at where it's selling the same things to the same people, that's why stay. When you're talking about new things to the same people, that's why evolve, which is why stay plus a little bit of why change, right? And then when you're selling new things to new people, that's why change. So that can be either your incoming, prospects, or it could be if you're selling to a new division, to a different division in an enterprise group, right? That's when you're talking about why change. So that's where I want to sort of kick us off with it. Anything else, Shawn or Cynthia, before we just sort of really quickly go through the different messaging?
You covered it.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like the crux of the book, but the frameworks are gold.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
So just so you can kind of see with the why stay renewal messaging, key to many of these things is documenting results, right? So when we talk about achieving business value, having those joint customer success plans, tracking what value they have, if you don't have that, and that's a big part of what we do, if you don't have that, it's very hard to have a successful why stay message. So that's assumed by them, but we know that that can't really be assumed. That was one of the comments that actually Daphne Lopez mentioned on the post today. She's like, yeah, but all of those other conversations, like, yeah, well, that's the work. Okay, so review prior decision-making process. This is where you remind them of, everything that went into it. Then you mentioned the risk of change, right? Like, hey, that's risky. You don't want to do that. Don't look at that other grass over there. This is the green grass, right? Stay here. So that's anticipated regret and blame. You highlight the cost of change, reinforce perceived cost to change, right? So that's really just the cost, the pain of changing. And then you also say, and why would you leave anyway? Look at all the things we're doing. We're always upgrading. We're always doing these things. This is the place to stay. So you're talking about your competitive advances that keeps you on that cutting edge. They made the right decision. This is why you stay, right? Whereas if they're going to pay more, and we're going to dig into this with a case study that Shawn has, we have document results, review prior decision-making process is the foundation. Then you again do these mention risk of change, highlight cost of change, detail competitive advances. So you're doing all the same argument. Then you just add on anchor price increase and introduce justified discount. So you anchor high and say, but for you, it won't be this much. It's going to be down here. And all of this you can find in the book. And then why evolve, document results, highlight evolving pressures. So here you start with, you document the results, right? Then you say, look, you have all these things going on in your business. There's so many business reasons why you need to evolve, right? And then you're sharing these hard truths. And if you don't evolve, you're not going to be on the cutting edge. You're not going to be able to do what you need to with your customers. And the emphasize the risk of no change. And so then you say, and if you don't change, or basically, if you make this evolution with us, if you add this product, then you will avoid loss, right? And you will have this vision that we have together of what you're going to achieve with these business results. That's the upside. So you avoid the loss and you achieve all of your dreams by adding this one new product, right? Is
Hey,
that,
Jan.
so I'm going through it quickly. Yeah. So tell me
Yeah,
your
just
insights.
a quick thing, like on all three of these, the way that that's mapped out is so, it seems almost too simple, but it's really not. I think one of the things that has to be reminded, and I did a post today with this visual, because when I saw the book, I thought it was magic, where you should be talking about the renewal throughout the whole process, really. Like, so when you establish those value milestones, you should be saying, hey, part of the reason we want to do this, because by the time we get to when it's time for you to renew, it's just much easier for you to kind of realize that value, and we could just keep going and not interrupt this progress we've made. You should be talking about, like, I think a lot of times people are afraid to talk about the renewal or any sort of commercials, but you need to sort of put that kind, throw it out there. So what if because if the customer says, well, we might not renew, that's the red flag, right? As opposed to hoping and praying. And I think that one of the graphics in the book was basically like, there's a lack of messaging. The contract's signed, you're doing QBRs, and then me thinking they're green. I think, Shawn, you put a note on that today on my post, which is 100% right. And then in the end, when it's time to renew, 3 months, 1 month, 2 months ahead, they're like, no, we're going a different way.
Oh, you went mute. You muted at the end.
I know I muted
Yeah.
myself because
Oh.
you didn't reinforce and actually talk about the renewal and confirm that alignment. Because when you start talking about the renewal through the process or mentioning it or confirming those value milestones, that helps them to kind of say, yeah, we are going to keep going, or it gives them the opportunity to say no or not. Or if there's hesitation, it gives you the opportunity to say, we're good for the renewal, right? Do you see any roadblocks? That's how you introduce that process naturally throughout the year.
So we have a case study from Shawn where it becomes a little more tangible, but I just want to take a quick second and see if there's any questions or thoughts that you have about this, because, you know, I did try to make it really simple, you know, from everything from the book, just to make it more clear, but sometimes simple makes it too simple and needs a little more elaboration. Any thoughts or questions? Yeah, Barbara. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. My weakness. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for presenting this, Jan. I think that in my case, and most of the places I worked as a CSM, there's a weakness not being able to quantify and present the cost of not changing, or you know, the cost of the future risk, and that is an economical decision, right? But usually customers are always waiting are more biased to solve risks that are immediate than the ones that are farther in the future. And we as CSMs, we are preventing those kind of risks. That's what we are here for. And so sometimes for me, it's difficult to present them with that cost so they can make an easier decision.
You know, Barbara, I would challenge that a little bit, because I think the cost of change can actually be very emotional, right? When you think about the work involved, you know, that's kind of painful, right? You know, like when you talk about, like, look at what we did to get here, and you remind them of all that they've achieved, right? And then you say, and so yeah, it's going to take us 6 months to get this additional feature that maybe this other company already has, but then you would have to go and rebuild all of these things we've built together, and all of these things that you've achieved, you would have to like start over from square one. So yeah, they might have this feature, but, you know, and it might take us 6 months to get this feature, but think about all of the work we've done together to get to this point, all of things you've achieved with this. And now we're able to do these other things, X, Y, and Z, besides that, you know, feature B kind of thing, right? And so like, it's going through and reminding them of what you've done together and what is involved whenever you change. Because when you rip something out, you have to also learn how to use that new tool. You have to go and implement it. You have to connect it with these other things. You know, like there's real work involved. So it's not just the cost of it, because that's human hours and that is costly, but it's also the just the brain power and the emotion, right?
Right. I think that for me, that's a little bit different at the moment because I'm a service provider. So for me, it's more like a commodity. It's like a little bit different, but I get your point
Okay.
totally. There's
All right. Well, if there's ways to become less commoditized, that's where you have your edge, right? As soon as you're a commodity, and sometimes that's just positioning. It's sometimes it's the product and sometimes it's positioning. Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Very briefly, so in terms of applying this framework, is the idea that if I'm in charge of, if renewals is under my portfolio, and I'm looking, 3 to 4 months out of the end of the contract, is the idea that I would take this framework and try to like fill in the blanks over the, those 3 to 4 months before the renewal? Or is it meant to be applied in a different way? Not having read the book, so.
Shawn, Cinthia, want to jump in?
I believe the framework is incredible, but it should be applied specifically to your use case. Should go step by step, translate whatever the framework step is into very specific items to your business, to your segments of your customers, even because that will change too and should change, I think. But if you then apply that, then it's a nice framework to follow and keep in mind and keep you on track.
Cool. Linda?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying, Jan. I've seen this in particular in education. You start losing stakeholder or end user buy-in if they know that something's going to change. Why do I bother wanting to learn how to use this if they're going to change their mind and it's going to be taken away from me? I don't want to invest the time, effort, and energy, so I'm not even really going to look at it. And I've seen it a lot in ed tech as there's the revolving door of resources.
Wow. Yeah. So that's a great way to sort of reinforce when you're talking to folks like, hey, let's do a longer deal because you're going to get better use if people think it's going to stick around longer. Yeah.
Definitely.
Great. Kat, and then we're going to go to Shawn's case study.
I'll be quick because Linda summarized my point. I have used the talk track that like change management is like a whole discipline. Like, have you thought about like what is the resourcing behind that? And some of Rachel Proven's like psychological impacts, just like Linda said. So that was one point I wanted to add. And then the other one slid it away. So maybe it'll come back. So over to Shawn.
And one of my favorite books, even though I love Rachel too, but one of my favorite books is Wired to Resist. And this really talks about the different types of change journeys, the emotion, like literally your brain on change, it responds differently. It's like that fear kicks in, right? So, all right. So let me share my screen again. And Shawn, why don't you walk us through your case study, which is also laid out very well and with lots of specifics in our resource slides at the end. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to add that I didn't include in my introduction is I did 7 or 8 years of sales from in-person to just over the phone. And there's frameworks and methodologies and very well vetted best practices there. Discovering this book was such a gift for all things post-sale. And so we'll dive right into it. I believe, Barbara, you are a service provider. So we did this while being a service provider and pivoting to offer SaaS. But briefly, here's the context. So we serve the SMB market closer to the S side of things. So owner operator, they're month to month. Legacy prices, this is a situation we had. And we've never done price increases before. We historically added capabilities at no fee adjustment. I've been with the company coming up on 10 years, so that's how long we had done that. And if there were renewals from a month-to-month client who wanted to commit to a year, we would historically offer discounts already on the legacy rate. And so that's the culture or the behavior that the client was used to. And we have around 1,000 clients. Last but not least, so commodity or a perception of low or no switching costs, there's no pain to actually fire us or move on to another vendor. So it's very challenging. And so our objective was, okay, we need to convert our month-to-month customers to annual. That's a big ask and task. So in addition to that, we said no fee adjustments, or three parts: month-to-month to annual, no fee reductions, I should say, as that was customary, and cherry on top, average a 10% MRR uplift. And so here's what we achieved: 14.6% MRR average increase. We improved retention and commitment. You talk a little bit about that. But strategically, how we applied the framework is going step by step through the psychology behind it. And to an earlier question, breaking out each stage and step to be very specific to our customer base and to test it before just deploying this to our entire customer base. We targeted 2 segments that would likely be least resistant to change. So a little psychology there. And so when we targeted these 2 segments, we followed the why stay framework. And another segment, we blended why stay with why pay more. And we were very regimented about each stage and what does that mean? What's our psychological goal? Here's the framework as it's written. Let's translate it to our use case and what matters to our customers. And we have the impact below. So it's been very successful. It was proven to be a successful approach. It's now rolled out to all of our customers. This was done 2 years ago, year and a half, 2 years ago, and now it's rolled out. And our company has changed tremendously in our approach to fee adjustments and renewals.
All right. Any thoughts or questions as we are getting ready to go to breakout rooms? Any
Yeah, I just
thoughts or
want to add
questions
on
for
that.
Shawn? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that case study, Shawn. I think that's just like a really good example of how using these sort of frameworks gives you that like consistent way to push back on the client or to actually just be more strategic to start with. It's the way that you interact with them. That was like on an SMB situation where, you know, it was because it was month to month, it was more transactional. If you look at this from an enterprise level as well, where maybe it's a more complex solution and maybe it's heavier. So it's harder to, you know, you have more of that incumbent, you know, positive on you if it's harder to kind of get away from it. But I think that at the end, like some of the ways you can, even they can still threaten to leave. They can still talk about like the competitors are offering more for less, all these sort of things. But I think there's other ways that you can include like, you know, get them to stick with you and say, okay, discounts based on multi-year contracts potentially, and or branding initiatives. And that, I love that because it's super creative. I got those ideas from marketing teams saying those are things they care about. All right, if we can get a video testimonial, if we can get an interview, if we can get them to, you know, to do some sort of referral for us, that has a value. And the reason I point those things out, again, this is probably more pertinent to enterprise clients, bigger customers, because it's just one of those intangible ways to get them to have skin in the game. I'll go fight for that discount and make that business case, but I need you to do this. It's worked, and I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and sometimes you do those trade-offs. Like one thing that I thought was really interesting about Shawn's use case is SMB is so absolutely volatile and is most likely to churn, and yet he was able to produce these results, and price increase conversations are really the toughest to have. And I loved how this framework really kind of guides you through that, you know, really towards, you know, success. And because he was able to use this, also incorporating an AI recorder, he was able to coach his team through it more effectively, and they actually worked with each other, and it literally changed the culture of the team to try and work with each other to get help from each other on how did you get through this conversation more successfully, right? And so there's just so many things at play here, but in the end, it's really by having a good structure to begin with for the conversation and really helping your CSMs through these conversations. So, and it really resonated because it's certainly how I've gotten through these types of conversations just on my own willy-nilly before I even realized this book existed, which I'm going to show again. So I do recommend it. But we thought that it would be useful then to have as a breakout question, just, you know, whether it's prices were increased, you know, have you been through that? where you've been through a price increase conversation. What did that feel like? Have you been through a situation where you've had to put forth price increase conversations with your customers? And then also just thinking about all these different types of messaging, how you might incorporate these messages. There is one other around apologies we didn't go over today, but I think on the 25th, we're going to go through that one in particular. So we'll all be back for that. But if you're ready to go to breakouts. Hey, Jen.
Hey, I saw the leave button and I was actually talking and I just hit it like in the middle of my
Oh
like,
no.
oh, but I was probably too excited. I didn't even read the flash. So my group is probably like, wait, what happened?
And she's gone. So share with us, what were you in the middle of sharing then? What were you talking about there?
We were kind of talking about like the proper way to communicate with a CS organization if price increases are coming, how that, and one of the persons in the call, Shawn, I think his name was, mentioned like how product marketing needs to come up with the talk track to communicate with CS. And I completely agree, but like that in some cases, you know, the talk track is so vague that it's not even like, you know, worth the whatever 15 minutes they put it together, so that you need to be kind of reassess. And I felt like the slides that you provided, the outlook of, you know, what was discussed in the book of why stay, why pay, and why evolve is going to help you develop your own talk track if you should like find yourself on that side of a pricing conversation where you have to talk with the client like, hey, our prices are going up. Similar to the case study that was going through, but I mentioned that I work for financial services organizations and like investment banking line of businesses. If you don't have that together before you have a conversation with them, they will just assassinate you on the phone without even like breathing, you know. And so you have to kind of be bulletproof. And I hate to like bring a violent like description of this conversation,
but it feels that way sometimes.
I apologize. But when you're in
She's
investment banking, it's just violent. So I don't know. What
well,
And she's
you know,
a New Yorker, so you know these New
I
Yorkers
know,
are
I'm in
tough
Brooklyn.
cookies.
Like I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah,
So,
they're tough.
yeah.
I know. I'm in New Jersey. I know.
Oh God, they're even more.
Well, you know, and that's a great point that you bring up, and that's why I think this book is fantastic, because it really focuses on those post-sales conversations and how they're different from pre-sales. And so often product marketing is used to setting up the pre-sales conversations, so they may not be setting you up for success, right? And so that's really key. And I love in the chat, Pam mentioned that Katie, you talked about trying to build in price increases in the contract, which you'd love to do, right? But in the case that Shawn had, you know, they said 2 years prior that they were doing a price increase, and then not a single AE delivered on that. They all said, oh, but for you, I'm going to give a discount. And we're going to go with the old pricing across the board. That's what everybody did, because it's hard to do sales, right? Well, that makes it even harder to do customer success. Patty, what were you going to share with us?
Yeah, so we had a great discussion in our group, and we all kind of worked in different industries. I will say that what I've run across in price renewal discussions that I've had a lot of throughout the years is definitely you have to deal with procurement and you have to deal with legal. So the sooner you can get involved and get your contract renewal discussions going, the better, because not only did I have my champion at the company to speak with, right? Procurement had to do their job of saying, yeah, we don't want to pay more. And so you had even harder conversations with procurement, especially with Fortune 500 companies. But then also, if there are any legal changes and you have to get the legal teams involved, that who knows how long that could take. I mean, even if we have everything on our side, they might not. Well, it'll be 2 months. Well, okay.
Yeah.
You need to really look at all the elements of the renewal and what's involved. So
absolutely. That's a great point, because like this is a conversation sort of structure, but when you're looking at what the structure is for the renewal process, that's where you need to kind of go backwards and think about all the elements involved. I know that we would start the conversations at 6 months out, and then fully engage in the conversation at 3 months out, because we had legal involved. We didn't have procurement, but we had legal, right? So things like that to think about, you know, how long it takes. I think we're at time, and I know you've got to go back to other meetings and other things in your day. Thank you so much for all of your contributions and participation today. And in 2 weeks, we're going to just zero in on the apology conversation from this book, because I don't know, but I've been there, and it can be rough. So they have a really great structure for that. So if you find that that's something you want to dig in on too, Cynthia, Shawn, and I will be back, but it'll be at the later time. It'll be at the 4:30 time on the 25th. So we'll update that over. And if you haven't subscribed, you need to both subscribe to Luma and then opt in for the event. So please be sure to do that. I can send reminder emails out now, so that's exciting, but be sure to do that. Yeah, Kat?
Is there a preferred link to make the book purchase from, or anything that helps you, Jan, if we use a certain link?
That's so kind of you to say. No, apparently I'm just going to represent a surge in their book sales, and they'll wonder why, because I've been telling everyone about it. So I wish you know what I should do is reach out to see if they want to give us a discount. That's what I should do. Let me
Good one,
see if I
Jan.
can-
Good
I'll see if I
one.
can work that out. Okay. Thank you so much, though. Really enjoyed seeing everyone here today.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Thanks for coming. We'll see you
Take
next time.
care.
Thank you,
Thank you. Take
everyone.
care. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Success Hour, formerly known as CS Office Hours. We regularly put out new content, so to be the first to know, like this episode, tap that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you soon.